And we are live. So if you get a chance to, are you monitoring it on YouTube?
Yes, I will.
Okay, I was just gonna say, hopefully you'll hear the sound is what I was getting at. So we're live. It's not your
Let me
typical.
check the sound.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Check the sound for me real quick. Validate so we don't go crazy. I'm actually gonna go onto Wi-Fi myself and check sound.
Oh, it's connected to my head. Hold up.
Right? It never works, guys. We're just testing everything out, as we always do, right when we start.
We're probably good. Oh yeah. Yep.
That's all that matters.
Test.
Yep, I heard it. I just heard it.
Oh yeah. Yep. All good to go.
We're good. I use chat on my phone because I don't have my something else up to and connected to the other Wi-Fi signal, and I don't want to drop a ton of frames doing this. But yes, we are not your typical IT guys. I'm Brad. That's Chris. Donald is not with us tonight. You know how we are. There's a couple of guys with the dream of helping others better navigate the crazy world of workstations, and also some of the other fun work technologies. So spring back into new hardware, spring forward into new hardware, spring into new hardware, however you want to word it. You can buy computers again. Praise Jesus. There are parts and components available for you to buy computers. I know I have it listed lower in the rundown. I'm going to start with this though, because people just need to be able to see these things. So we're going to go share the screen real quick, everybody. And I want everybody to see this so that they can understand. This is no joke. The shuffle may almost be no more. I'm not going to use sold by Newegg, but I'm at least use shipped by Newegg. That makes sense. Prices are falling, one, that's huge, and two, components are in stock.
Wow, it's 6900 XP for 30. Oh snap!
Yeah, guys, components are in stock. They're not going to be quite MSRP yet, and that's okay.
30. Yeah, 3070 for. Oof.
And this is just shipped. But look, a 1660 Super is now back into the $300 range. It's not $550. That's take it with a grain of salt. There are going to be some components, and this is just shipped. Let me see what I go. If I go sold by Newegg, that always gets you better prices. But this should tell you even better. So sold by Newegg, we're going to go into list format. We're going to sort it from lowest to highest so that you can start at the bottom. Obviously, there's garbage always at the bottom, but we're talking 6500 XTs. Pretty dang close to their MSRP. They're not $199, guys. They're a little bit above it, but they're close.
1650s for 250.
Yeah, and there's a 1650 regular 1650 for 300. And I was talking about 6500 XTs, not 1650s. Yeah. Brand new cars are in stock. There's a 3050. Now, once again, some of these prices are going to be a little inflated. People tend to forget, though, Chris, I think a lot of times, the one thing that nobody really looks at and thinks about is the fact that right now we still have tariffs in place. And those tariffs those tariffs cost a premium to ship stuff from overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So
25%.
Yeah, at a minimum. I'm not saying that it's great. I don't like it myself. Nobody likes it themselves. But it is, if things are close to their are within 25 to 30% of their MSRP, even 40% of their MSRP. That's pretty good right now. Shipping costs are still exorbitantly high. So when you see shipped by Newegg and yeah, it says $9.99 right now, or you're buying it from Amazon and it's coming with Prime or something like that, guys, keep in mind, it ain't free to buy this stuff. So, and to ship this stuff. And you and I and while they have a negotiated shipping rate, I promise you, it is not the same as what's out there now. So just keep that in mind. What's that?
I was trying to find what the current cost to ship a 20-foot is. Get instant 20-foot estimate. Ooh.
Oh, they're expensive as crap. They're several $1,000s.
One container for 20-foot origin. China.
Nothing is cheap to ship like that. But
One con, two, costs, and really
we go back to 1.
live
And
rates.
then
For a
change
20-foot.
96.
Good God. 8 to 20 grand.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like 1 to 8 grand.
Oh no, it's supposed to be like, usually they average between 2,500 and 4 at the worst. That's average. That's the old average. So guys, you got to understand there's a massive increase in shipping costs. So don't think that I'm not saying that they won't ever come back down close to their MSRP area or towards a natural area where they should be. But between inflation and all that stuff, guys, don't expect cards to get much cheaper. I mean, you're already paying $500 for the top, or $600 to $700 for the top tier consumer CPU, whereas 4 or 5 years ago that was $350 to $400. So if those have gone up 20 to 30%, expect graphics cards in general to have gone up 20 to 30%.
You can.
Yeah,
It's blurred.
kind of. So expect that though. I mean, expect prices to be higher. There's nothing we can do about that. But the key is they're in stock and they're not at like 5 times the rate of a 6600. Or
Right.
You're not finding a 3060 for $1,000 right now. They're still expensive, but there's not $1,000.
I think we saw a 3060 Ti at a high of like 1,700 on eBay.
Oh, dude, they got way. I mean, you can actually buy. You know what? I gotta hit the button. We're gonna go look. We're on the rabbit hole already for a second. So we're gonna go look at a 3090 and see what we can find. I'll do a 3090 and a 3080 Ti on here real quick. So holy shit, guys! 3080 Ti's for the price around the MSRP of a 3090. That's pretty dang good, all things considered.
Is that in stock?
That's in stock. That's buyable right now. It's a 3080 Ti. Keep in mind, it's not a 3090. But you come down and get a 3090 and, all right, there's a...
What does 3090 cost?
The first one is $22.79. Okay, it's about a 40% markup. But Chris, remember, there was a point in time about within 6 months ago, you couldn't buy these things for
less than 3
or 4 times the price of at least double, at least $3,000.
It was bad.
I mean, yeah, it was definitely really bad. I mean, you got the Zotac. I mean, yes, and you do have some that are still way too expensive. And yes, the super cheap models are out of stock, unfortunately. That's okay though, guys. They'll come back. Give it time. Let me see where the 3080 prices. You're seeing Asus 3080 prices, 3090 prices that are $22.19. There's a 2112. things like that. Oh, EVGA 3090 for the Win 3. It's out of stock right now, keep in mind. But they're coming back in stock, and that's for $2,000 for a 3090.
So
$2,000.
it's about 18% over.
Yeah.
Where it's supposed to be. Not terrible.
Keep this. Just mind you, you couldn't buy them. You couldn't get them for less than $2,800 for the cheapo models. You know, you couldn't get them for less than $2,800 not a month ago, right? I mean, so if that was the case, like this is good. We're okay. I'm not so concerned about it. As I come back to just me and you, Chris, for a second, but that's the big thing we have to remember, guys. Like there's a lot going on. Yes, it sucks. Prices are kind of higher than we would like them to be, but you can buy stuff again. And I would imagine by the end of Q2, like stockpiles will finally start showing up. And when stockpiles start showing up and there's an oversupply, guess what? Prices will start to finally fall again. Because they're going to have to start they've been overproducing and overproducing and overproducing. Eventually they're going to have to do something with all that production. As they prepare, people are going to start, especially around Q2. Q1, it's still okay, but around Q2, people are going to start preparing for the next generation stuff that's supposed to come out later this year. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but next gen stuff supposedly wants to come out now. So that was the gaming side of things. Let's go back for a second and look at, and this is something that this is the way I like to give a good comparison. So bring it back to components, video cards, workstation.
Are you trying to put it back on screen?
Yep. I had to get back to the page first.
Oh.
Workstation cards sold by Newegg. Priced low to high.
This will be interesting to see.
Guys, guess what? 6400 6400 is in stock. 5500 is in stock. T1000 4 gig in stock. 6600 in stock. 5700, something that had been out of stock and the price was running around because it was really good at mining. The price
that RTX 4000 is still $1,000.
That we're going to talk about that here in a second. But the A4000 is $1,393. W6800 in stock, 20 MSRP. A4500 in stock. A5000 in stock.
I wonder, is 2200 the actual MSRP for the A4500?
It's around it. It's supposed to be the A5000 was supposed to get a price bump last year, but in the past year it's just not been in stock. So really trying to find it for what the MSRP was supposed to be. I think the MSRP is supposed to be around $2,500, and the A45 is supposed to be around $2,000. So a few percentage points off there, not a big deal. Just like the A4000 is supposed to be around $1,000, but it's $1,393. Between $1,000 and $1,100, something like that, roughly is what I've heard in the past. I've never actually seen them for those prices, but I've heard that. But that was because, once again, in the past you couldn't find them. The reason the RTX 4000 is still in stock is because they can continue to make so many of them because they're on an older node, and being that they were available, and they needed something to have in that price range that was available to people, guys. So that they had to have that. That was something that had to be available to them. So you're seeing that the A4000 is probably going to start replacing the Quadro pretty soon here. the regular RTX 4000. So that's getting ready to go away. You'll start to see them selling down these supplies and less people ordering the regular 4000. I mean, the regular 4000 was a fine card and did the job for a lot of people that needed those cards. But it's like the whole reason there's a 4000 and a 4500. The 4500 is really, as stockpiles continue to grow, you're going to start to see this price fall to where it's more directly in between the A4000 and the A5000. It'll probably get down to about $1,750 by the end of the year. Maybe the beginning of next year sometime. I mean, just as supplies increase. I don't know when a professional refresh is coming. I'd like to hope that it'll be somewhat along, rumor mills speak of a new GeForce series coming out this fall. I would like to think that they would at least launch something alongside that with the enterprise grade stuff. But regardless, these cards are going to be around for a while. They have a 5-year life cycle on them. It's one of the reasons they were able to continue producing the 4000. And as a matter of fact, I think the 6000s, yeah, they had it somewhere. They're not selling the A6000 on here anymore, but regardless, pretty much anything in AMD and Intel, or AMD and Nvidia's production stock is available now, and something that you can actually buy. That's the key. It's something you can actually buy now, and it's around the price that you'd want to buy it for. The only thing I don't see on this list is the A2000, and I don't know how often they sell a 2000 series card this way. I'm sure they're ordering them and would like to put them up there because they're a very valuable card, but that's the only thing I don't see. So that takes us to story number 2. New hardware, guys. So laptops are finally here. Mobile World Congress was this past week. It wrapped up. One of the big things that came out of that is there was a lot, and I mean a lot, of laptops that launched. Okay? I mean, a lot more than I was expecting to see, that's for sure. So, with all that comes all the good things associated with it, which means Alder Lake and Ryzen 6000 mobile chips were on display. We saw a 3080 Ti for laptops. Maybe we'll see something comparative, maybe a 4500 for laptops soon, or a 5500 or 6000. We'll see.
I think the guys at Corridor were demoing the Razer Blade 15, which had like it had an i9 with I think a 3080 Ti in it.
Yep. And
crazy.
And the 3080 Ti is just an upgraded chip, guys. It's nothing special. It's something that they're pushing a little bit harder. You're only gonna find it in big boy laptops. You're not gonna find it in like the slim, thin ones. And you definitely won't find it in a business laptop for something that you're doing. I do, however, want to bring up this and take you over to what's going on with something Lenovo's launching, which it's piquing my interest so much because the vast majority of people do not need a Core i5 or Core i7 laptop. If all they're doing is working with Microsoft Word and Excel, Outlook, just general PDFs and things like that, you don't really need a very powerful CPU if you've got enough RAM to handle it all. You don't really need a powerful CPU. So Lenovo is launching something which I think is going to intrigue a lot of people. And that is the ThinkPad X13s. It is an ARM-based processor. All right. It is Snapdragon's 8CX. We'll pull this up and tell it to us. It's the 8CX Gen 3 compute platform. It's an SoC from Qualcomm. It does have a 5G chip built into it. And something that might intrigue other folks, it has a 28-hour battery life on video playback. You know, Chris, we kind of were talking about this earlier today. All-day battery from a laptop, guys. All-day battery in Word, Excel, Outlook, moving files around.
As in like the entire day, not just like
I'm talking like 12 to 20.
the working day.
Yeah, I'm talking about between 12 and 24 hours, 18 hours at least, most likely, worth of working battery life. Okay? Working battery life. So, if you want to see this, here's the specs that get associated with it.
I can't read that.
Up to 32 gigs of LPDDR4X. I'd imagine it's probably going to be, most people would buy it with 16, but that's fine too. It has a 5 megapixel RGB camera, a 5 megapixel IR camera, which is enough for 1080p, guys, in case you're wondering.
1 terabyte SSD.
Terabyte PCI Express SSD. It's not 19 by. It's not 16 by 10. It's 16 by something. Maybe it is 16. No, it is 16. It's 16 by 10. It is a 16 by 10 screen, so it's got a 1920 by 1200 display.
Yeah.
All right. It's got a trackpad and ThinkPad, a little bubble that you think of when you think of Lenovo laptops. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be a great little laptop once again for the purposes of people that don't need high power, stuff. This is the kind of business laptop that I could see a lot of companies wanting to go with, because it's got ARM has got a lot more security based around it. It's easier to be secure on ARM. And once again, for the everyday user, this just makes sense. ARM is a cheaper to manufacture chip. It's a cheaper to manufacture machine, so it's going to be more cost effective. I'm not saying this thing's going to be sub, $500, guys. That's not going to happen. But I could see this being sub $1,200 for the spec'd out machine. And to me, I figure that's pretty good. It's got the ability for a touch panel, right? You can use docks with it. They have docks for it. Port replicators, USB-C port replicators for it. So you can get your Ethernet port and things like that. Let me show you that, because I think there's a thing that tells you. Because it doesn't have a lot of ports on the side, guys, just so everybody's aware. It does have a... let me see if I can find it. It does have it's got 2 USB-C ports, a headphone jack. I believe it's got a micro SD card slot on it, and a Kensington lock. It's only got 2 USB Type-C slots, though. So, but when you're thinking about this as a business, when you're buying a business laptop, you almost always buy a dock of some kind or a hub of some kind to go with any of those things you buy initially. And so they've got a dock that comes with a standard and a micro SD card slot reader. It's got a extra 2 USB Type A ports. It's just like a travel replicator, and then they've got the USB-C hub that they have that gives you additional Type A ports, HDMI, VGA out, I believe, as well, and also gives you an Ethernet port, 100 gig Ethernet port. Which, let me say this right now, and I don't know if some of the contacts that I have in the industry listen to this or watch this. I might pass it along to them, but I really hope and pray, Chris, one things we get with Alder Lake when it comes to the business and professional upper end laptops, I want to get away from single gig Ethernet. Gigabit Ethernet has been around for forever. It is time to upgrade. It is time to have
Laptop with
a
10
laptop that's
gig.
got 10 gig or at least 5 gig or 2.5 gig for crying out loud.
Like I would say at least 30 to 40% of the desktop boards that we sell, if not more like 50%, they all have better than gig.
All right.
Actually, what is our default cheapo?
It's going to have gigabit. Default cheapo is going to
Yeah,
be gigabit. I don't care.
well, no, our default cheapo board is not a cheap board. It's used Z690 plus Wi-Fi, so it's about a $290 motherboard. So it's definitely not cheap, and it has uh 2.5 gig. That's all it's got, but that's like our base model Z690 board.
Okay. I would like to point out when Gigabit Ethernet launched. Chris, this is going
800 years ago.
to date us. 1999. Gigabit Ethernet has been around since 1999, people. It's time to stop putting that in machines. In a $2,000 to $3,000 machine, if you've got Gigabit Ethernet in it these days, you are wasting our time. Stop
Literally.
it. Stop it. It is 2022. It is 24 years later. This thing can almost rent a damn car. Gigabit Ethernet can almost rent a damn car. Upgrade it, people. It is time to get away from it. Like that's one thing I've never understood. Like, nobody wires a house with Cat 5 anymore, or Cat 5e anymore. Everybody wires houses with Cat 6a. And I'm not talking about just your internet lines, your Ethernet lines. They wire like phone lines and phone jacks with Cat 6a now. Why? Because it all uses the same twisted pair concept. And I am referencing 6A versus regular 6 because regular 6 is only 10 gig for the first 100. No, it's not 100 feet. It's 50 feet. No, first 10 meters, so 30 feet. 6A is the whole 100 feet. I know people that do it with Cat 7. The price of the cable is not that much more expensive than a Cat 5e these days. Like, why? And also, here's a fun fact for you, Chris. Did you know Cat 5e can run 5 gigabit?
No.
Yes, it can. Cat 5e is certified at 100 meters up to 5 gigabit per second. And we are still installing 1 gigabit networking NICs into our machines. Like, that's what people are still doing. I do not understand that. I will never understand that. You will never get me to understand that. That is so damn stupid. Like, yes, switches aren't really up to date, and routers don't include it. But if you actually look at a home router, the specs inside of them are pretty dang garbage. Even the top of the line ones are pretty garbage. So it's time. It's time. So to the Intels and the AMDs and the Nvidias and the system builders of the world that may one day watch this, stop putting gigabit on your boards. Stop making that like I said, if you get up over $1,000 in a machine, it damn well better be 2.5 gig or better. And if you get up over $2,000, or actually I'd say that if you get up over $2,500 and you're not doing 10 gig or at least 5 gig, you're wasting precious time with folks, and you're not preparing them for the future. You're making them live in the past. You're making them not want to go out and buy these switches and make people want to build better switches and put out more switches. Yes, like I said, I know. So I'll give you an example. I just bought an 8-port 10 gig switch from Netgear. From what's it called, Chris? From Amazon. I just ordered one last week because I was going to need it while I'm down here. I'm not at home, in case that, for those that were wondering. I'm on the road for work this week. I'll be back soon. So, all that being said, I needed a new switch. I've got switches at home. I have multi-gig, operating throughout my house at home. But the thing is, a 8-port switch, 8-port 10 gig switch, yes, it is about $500 or $600. A 5-port's only $300, $400. And you can get a 10-port multi-gig switch that has 4 1-gig ports, 2 2.5 gig ports, 2 5-gig ports, and 2 10-gig ports on it for like $180. So, yeah, it's not the greatest solution, but most home internet coming in isn't better than gigabit anyways. So you can run a gigabit Ethernet line to your switch. One of those 4 can be your actual WAN, coming from your WAN, whatever you're coming from your router, whatever you're using. And then everything else wired up could be, if you got 4 rooms wired up, you could have at least 10 gig in 2 rooms, and better than that, and then 5 in 2 rooms, and then 2.5 in 2 rooms if you needed it. It's available. And if your house is just older and wired with Cat 5e, guess what? You can have 5 gigabit in every room. The fact that there are manufacturers out there that focus on switches that are 8 and 16 port, and we're down a rabbit hole, so we're gonna conclude this rabbit hole pretty well. The fact that there are manufacturers out there that just blatantly go out and say, all right, we're going to charge $100 for a 16-port gigabit switch. If they would go ahead and upgrade their internals on that sucker and make it a 8 gig or an 8-port 5 gigabit switch or an 8-port 2.5 gigabit switch, there needs to be more manufacturers of that stuff. Like, we need that. We need switches that have that available. It's just facts. I have ranted enough. I'm sorry. It's one point that just absolutely 1999. God, that's pathetic, y'all. That is absolutely pathetic. So, on to the next story. I say all that. Let me wrap up the last one. I say all that to say this: ARM could be an excellent solution for people with a business need that don't need,
power,
super power machines. And I know
right.
Lenovo's got that model coming out with the business design. I'm sure Dell and HP will have something soon. Lenovo is just the first to push it. And if there's one thing I know about Lenovo, they tend to push the limits on what they can offer. They were the first people to go back to vapor chambers for their coolers for their professional line because they wanted to be able to put more high-end parts in there a couple years back. So all that being said, dude, you got to understand, Lenovo is on somewhat on the leading edge of these things. And they're located right down the street from you, Chris, in Raleigh.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
ARM is a good solution, though, for general business users. It's almost like having a MacBook these days. It's a good solution for a general business user, but it's at a much cheaper price than a MacBook. On to the next story. So this next story actually makes a lot of sense, speaking back to the ARM discussion that we were just having, but chiplets on package. So on your CPU package that you actually plug into a socket. AMD, ARM, Intel, Nvidia, and a lot of others, Microsoft, TSMC is another one too, so Samsung, are pushing to create a universal standard for manufacturing chiplets and putting them on a package. So they're calling it UCIe. Let me share my screen real quick. And that stands for Universal Chiplet Interconnect Express. kind of like PCI Express, but with chiplets. It's a lot like what they're moving forward with the. I don't know if you've seen CXL, Chris.
I've heard about it.
It's Compute
like
Express Link, so it's something that Sapphire
like a cache
Rapids. Huh?
of sorts.
No, CXL is over PCI Express. It's using PCI Express 5.0 as the first iteration, but Compute Express Link is something that a lot of the big manufacturers, it's primarily for things like FPGAs, and GPU connects and having a better interconnect, reducing noise between that communication standard. It's something that has been in development for a little while, and so UCIe like this it's not coming out quickly, guys. Just so you're aware, it is not something that will come out within a year or two. But Sapphire Rapids is one of the first CPUs to utilize Compute Express Link CXL because it's PCI Express 5.0. And they wanted that PCI Express 5.0 because of the bandwidth. I mean, it's double PCI Express 4.0, obviously. So is it 100 gigabit? It's over 100 gigabit. It's 1.6 because 8,000. Yep. So it was 8. I have to look up the definitions. I believe it's 1.6 gigabit terabit by both ways. So technically that's 3.2 in performance. But CXL is for, like I said, it's for FPGAs and stuff like that. But this is something that would be similar to that, where utilizing CXL and PCI Express and other interconnects that are coming out soon, they want to have a way to just generically drop stuff on the package and say that if TSMC manufactures something, it's going to integrate with something that Intel manufactures, that's going to integrate with something Samsung manufactures, and it doesn't matter who the person is that's ordering it, whether it's AMD that's ordering the part. A lot of this gets back to Intel, and the reason this is even coming back into play was last year when Intel came back and said, "Hey, we're gonna open our foundry up to other people." But in doing that, we're gonna open that when we open that foundry up, we're gonna also open up the what's the term I'm thinking of? Where they were opening up their IP to others to be able to use. So you could actually go out and license Intel IP, kind of like ARM does. And so since they were doing that, they figure now we've got to have a common interconnect that everybody can use. And it makes sense. The Infinity Fabric is great, but it's got its own performance, problems as well. So for them to come out with this, I think it's a great idea. I think the promise and the thought for doing this is very wise. So, okay with that completely. And it makes a lot of sense. These next few stories don't really have a lot of links to tell on them just because it doesn't make sense to pull them up. But we do have Apple is getting ready to launch new products on the 8th. I would highly bet there's going to be an M2 type launch.
I saw something about I think you were telling me about Ice Lake Mac Pro.
Yeah, there's a potential that Ice Lake might make it into Macs, to the upper end Mac Pros, so we might see that if that launches. I've seen a couple of rumors about that, about Mac Pros possibly using Ice Lake, and that's one of the reasons that Xeon W exists this time. Because nobody's building. There's not mass manufacturer for anybody, so somebody's got to be doing it. Well, no, I'm not saying you. I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at it from like nobody in terms of there's not a lot of motherboard manufacturers that are mass manufacturing those things. So
Right.
you got a couple of the big server companies are, which makes sense, because they're also interchangeable with Xeon Scalable. But it would make sense that they would do this, that Intel would do that and launch that if they had a buyer, i.e. Apple, that was interested in it. And I haven't found a lot of I don't have any way to really weigh this, but I have a feeling that scaling ARM to meet Ice Lake or to meet Threadripper Pro, it ain't gonna happen. You can't get that multi-core performance like you want to. I mean, you already saw, yes, it's more power hungry. Intel's designs are more power hungry. That's just a fact. But if you can't get the performance you want out of it, and ARM is, when you start going bigger and bigger with chip size, that monolithic cost, sure, they've got a 10 core out now with the M1 Max and whatnot, and it's got an integrated GPU. But realistically, when it comes to performance users, it's really hard to pull away from that multi-core design from an Intel machine. And if their 10-core machine was pulling, on the CPU tests, is pulling 35 watts, and Intel's got 250 for 38 cores, I'd say that they could get a 30-core M1 Max, M1 Extreme or something like that. But then you can't utilize and that's the thing that Apple's got to figure out. They don't have a way to utilize like the add-in cards and stuff, Chris. And that's a big part of Mac Pro business, is the add-in cards that Apple pretty much pushes and sells. And M1 and until they get to the point where it's an SoC that has PCI Express attached to it, which I don't think M1 did. So it might be next year or the year after that they launch, like the M2 comes with PCI Express on board. In the sense of PCI Express like we think about it, like it's got, like they're able to build a chip that's got 64 PCI Express 4.0 or 5.0 lanes that can utilize the interconnects, and utilize those add-in cards. But it's possible that we could get another year. Now, I could be totally wrong with that statement. I have no clue. This is just me. That's pure speculation based on conversation that I may know. Conversation and reading between the lines, and put to you that way. No one has told me, hey, they're gonna not do a thing. Like that's not something somebody's out there telling me. But what they are telling me, and what I am hearing, is that it's just it seems hard to fathom that Apple would walk away so fast. Now, I've been wrong before. I've read things and read into things wrong, and I could be totally off on that. So it's with a grain of salt. I'm just speaking my own 2 cents of my own connecting dots between what I've read, what I've seen, users out there in the community and what they do with their machines. I also think it would be really hard for AMD to justify building the W6900 and the W6800X and stuff for them specifically for them to not be useful essentially after 9 months. Like that to me doesn't make any freaking sense. But could be the case. We'll see. AMD also closed their deal with Xilinx, which is an FPGA manufacturer. Intel bought an FPGA manufacturer. Yeah, it's a huge deal. It gets back to this whole, and honestly, the whole conversation we were just having on chiplets and the architecture associated with chiplets and the architecture associated with putting several things on a package and so on and so forth. All of that makes complete sense to me because of with Xilinx, because then they can put FPGAs directly on package. Use this UCIe Express connection, and guess what? All this stuff starts to make sense now. Why they want all these different interconnects makes a lot more sense, because this is going to truly revolutionize FPGAs being a part of the SoC. Right? So that's something to think about. Like we said before, GPUs are back in stock, and that's huge. The last story that we're going to talk about will probably make people's minds get blown. So Nvidia admitted it, so we can actually I can actually run with this and feel a little more confident about it. But Nvidia admitted it; they were hacked. A group hacked them. I'm not going to bring it up because I don't like talking about people and rewarding them for doing bad acts. But yes, Nvidia was hacked. And one of the few things that came out of that was a leak of a lot of data. It's a leak of a lot of data. The biggest of which is it would appear as though Nvidia has taken a page right out of AMD's back pocket and putting a large amount of cache directly on package, on the die.
Rising cache.
Yeah.
Rising cache.
Yeah. Yeah. They're raising cash and cashing out. How many cash jokes can you make? Yeah, that's our goal. All right. How many cash jokes can we make? We're up to 3 now.
Johnny Cash.
Yeah. I wonder how AMD is going to cash in on this hearing about it. Because Intel's definitely going to be out of cash if this doesn't go well. But the interesting thing with this is we've got okay, so you hopefully if you can see it and read it, great. If not, I'll see it and read it for you. Ampere, worst node, obviously. Had 6 megs of L2 cache, I should say.
Best node.
On a worse node. All right, 6 megabytes. Lovelace, top, 96 megs of L2 cache. Ladies and gentlemen, that is 16 times the amount of cache on the CPU die versus
that's like a whole Benjamin.
Yeah, that's big money cash right there. Big money cash. Yes, there's leaks and everybody talks about, well, already, there could be an 800 watt card coming out of Lovelace. I don't see that. I don't see a need for that. Once again, anything that you hear out of me on this discussion right now is purely speculative, guys. I can connect dots because I can understand the power usage differences, the package changes, and that kind of stuff. I would say that you could see a 40 series GPU that's, for lack of a better word, double to 2.5 times better for only a little bit more power, or the same even. Because before this, we didn't know that they had an L2 cache increase like this. And one thing you will learn is with any architecture, if you add a crap ton of cache to it, it automatically makes things go faster. All right, automatically. So we're getting basically 75% more CUDA cores, 75% more SMs. We're getting 15 times the L2 cache on a much more energy efficient N5 node from TSMC, according to this document. Now, this is, like I said, Nvidia confirmed they were hacked by these people. So this is, you can take this with a grain of salt, but this is going to be from an internal document somewhere. I mean, like I said, we don't have a lot of specs here. We don't have a lot of information to it, and Video Cards gives you a great rundown of it. If you want to read more about it, go to the link that we put out there for the rundown. But I would say it to you this way. For the same amount of power, clock speeds will be higher because it's a better node.
Smaller node.
Potentially 20 to 30% higher because it's a better node. All right. You've got a shit ton of extra L2 cache. That's going to improve performance 5 to 10% probably. Right there.
So I'm seeing, based on purely SM count, that the 8104 has the same amount of SMs as the GA103. So you could say that if the 3090 was the GA102, which I'm pretty sure it is, and the GA103 is a 3080, then a 4070 and a 3080.
That's a false statement. That's a false statement.
No?
So a 3080 is also on 102 this generation.
Yeah.
It's just a lower CUDA core count. They just lowered the number of SMs from like 84 to 70 something.
So,
but you could look
at so the level 3 of Lovelace has the same amount of SMs as level 2 for Ampere.
I think the way you and I were discussing it earlier, it's easier to look at it this way. So use your numbers this way. You've got 8102 and GA102 are actually the RTX A6000 and probably the RTX L6000, whatever they end up calling it. They're gonna fuse off some SMs because they're gonna make it for the GeForce line, just because they'll want to pull some more performance out of it that way, get some clocks and stuff like that. They never give the full die to the top card when they launch it. So the 3090 Ti is technically a GA102 full die. It's a GA102 350. GA102 100 is the 3080. I think GA102 200 is the 3090. GA102 400 is a RTX 6000. That's the full die. Now, that had a different memory controller because it was G6 versus G6X. And this is just talking about what the dies would be. I would probably say that you'll see a 4090 and a 3080, and probably in the same sense a L6000 and an L5000 brought out of 8102 again. And if that's the case, you're looking at them trying to basically, if they try tiering it to go for 75% more SMs, so you can translate all that over on each die or on each tape out. So 70% more from the previous gen. That would mean that the 3090 would have like 18 something. The 3080 would have like 16, maybe 15,000 CUDA cores, somewhere in that range, and still be on that same 102 die. And you could, in theory, once again, with those two number sets, essentially double performance. With the fact that you're also getting an extra power package advantage by being on this new node, a much more energy efficient node, which means you can get much more power out for the same. So for the same amount of power, you get more performance. That's the way you have to look at that. Because that's where the node advantage comes in. So the CUDA core count is just the die size being smaller so they can fit more CUDA cores in the same die size. But the other benefit to a node shrink is that it also becomes more energy efficient for the same clock speeds. So I'm going to use 2 gigahertz as a number. So if GA102 is running at 2 gigahertz, all right, and you keep the die size the exact same between the GA102 die and the 8102 die, all right, you're shrinking the node, so you're packing the transistors in tighter, which means you could get that big bump in transistor count like they're getting. But the node shrink also comes with an energy efficiency advantage, probably of 20 to 30%, which means So at 300 watts, we use a round number. So at 300 watts, you're getting 2 gigahertz on a GA102 die. All right. At 300 watts on a AD102 die, you're getting 2.6 gigahertz. 2.4 to 2.6 gigahertz. Not to mention, that's all that excludes this L2 cache stuff. So you get a 20 to 30% efficiency bump because we know how energy poor, for lack of a better word, I'm gonna call it, Ampere was from Samsung. It was a major step up, and it was better than TSMC 12, but it was nowhere near as energy efficient as TSMC 7, N7. So N5 is going to have a performance advantage, as well as the performance advantage that N7 had over the 8N from Samsung. So you're getting a power efficiency advantage on both of those node strengths, essentially, which should get you 20 to 30% more power efficiency. So it should mean a 20 to 30% clock speed advance is possible under the exact same power usage. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that, and don't hold me to it. They may not do that, but all these rumors of 800 watt graphics cards are absolutely asinine. The average room in your home has a 15 amp breaker in it. Occasionally you'll find a room with a 20 amp breaker. The normal room has a 15 amp breaker. Simple math says 15 times 110. I'll do 120 because technically we're supposed to be at 120 volts. But 15 amps times 120 volts means the amount of wattage you can pull from the wall is
1800.
Yep, right around 1800 watts. So that means that if you've got a decent machine that's got a 1600 watt power supply and actually uses it, you have no extra power out. Like, you can't plug anything else in.
You can't plug in a router, you can't plug in monitors or a fridge.
TV, whatever you would have in that room.
Nothing.
So I find that highly unlikely. Could I see them requiring 1,000 watt PSU for the next gen? Sure. And 1,000 watts not unreasonable. I mean, when you think about all the other stuff that gets plugged in into that with a card, and it's only because it might get a power spike that's up to 400 or 500 watts or something like that. Not gonna run at 400 to 500 watts. It can't do. That's not sustainable. You can't cool that thing, dude. You're talking about putting a space heater in every room. Like, that's just not. That's not. Not no, but hell no. You know, I just don't see it. I mean, and I could be wrong, but I just don't see it. I say all that to say this, though. I mean, realistically, you got RDNA 3 that's supposed to be double performance. This right here tells me that Lovelace could be double performance.
Lovelace is going to kick ass.
RDNA 3 is going to make some major fronts forward here, man. If they're not dumb this generation, and AMD actually puts a workstation card out that can compete with the 6000 series professional card, I'm going to be very interested. I can already tell you their professional cards are very, very tempting. Dude, that's the thing. Like 32 gigs of VRAM versus 24 or 20 for the same performance. I mean, if you don't need CUDA, the 6800, dude, it's in line with what a lot of people would want for a lot of workflows. I'm not saying that it's perfect. If you've got a CUDA workflow, I'm sorry it doesn't work. But just think about that from that nature. I would dare say that if they come out with something that really can compete on the top end of the workstation market, it'll probably cost a little less because they still haven't really claimed workstation market like they want to. But I could really see AMD stepping up in the workstation space and making something something big. So this tells me that we only have to see what AMD does. I mean, and I know AMD isn't as big as Nvidia or isn't as big as Intel right now, but they just their market cap just passed Intel. So they need to start playing with the big boys here and pushing Nvidia in the workstation market. The enterprise RTX line is great, and it's got a lot. It gets back to that though too. Like you've got 6,000, 5,000. Those are up there. Not a lot of people are going to get around that. But the 4,500, the 4,000, the 2012 gig, and the 2006 gig. Those are all in a decent price range for a professional GPU. It makes a lot of sense to me. So keep that in the back of your mind. Well, we've made it to a little over an hour. We don't have any questions because I didn't really share this and try to push it to a bunch of people. But
that's all right.
Yeah, like I said, I think we're going to have, there's going to be a lot more. Donald's coming down and will be around me here pretty soon, so I'll be back around him and we'll be able to do some more, he and I will be together. So you're probably going to see another episode or two next week. Depending on what your schedule's like, Chris, you might be on both. If we do two, you might be on both. If we do one, you might be on one. But
yep.
Prepare yourself. It's coming. We're going to have some good conversations. We're going to talk things up. Hope everyone has a good weekend and enjoys President's Day and all the sales that were out for President's Day. Go out and buy you a nice new big screen TV. All the new things are coming out right now. So like I said, prepare yourselves. That's actually, you know what? That's one thing we will cover next week. We're going to go over what Apple launches. Because that's going to be,
cool.
I keep telling myself this. If they launch a nice Mac Mini, I might buy one. Those things, I hear they make great little, what do you call them? Like networks, or not network servers, but like NAS boxes where you just plug stuff into them. Use them as like for external drives.
Like a little plug server.
A mini, like a little mini home server in general. Not necessarily Plex alone, but like just a mini home server. But you can also get the, like I said, you plug external drives into them, and it's got a 10 gig. You can buy them with a 10 gig connection. So that's huge to me. But to everyone else out there, what?
Oh, I was just making a joke about 10 gig.
Yeah, exactly. I knew you probably were. You didn't cash in like I thought you would, though. The cash jokes will continue next week, folks. So if nothing else, you'll definitely hear from us next Friday to talk about the Apple stuff. We may do something Wednesday for that too, but Tuesday maybe after the event happens. Yep. Have a good weekend. Stay safe and enjoy it all, y'all.